Did you parachute in the army?
I did, yeah, part of the military. I think it was my seventh or eighth. I got caught up at the door. There's a fella in front of me balked. I got pushed from behind and I fell over the top of him. And my static line wrapped around my wrist and then smashed me against, I think, the door of the plane as I got sucked out.
Welcome to the podcast that guides men to demystify and develop their intuition. I'm your host, Doug Bites. Let's dig into the science and expand your horizons. My guest today could easily be compared to Steve Irwin when it comes to passion for a better world. Mark Valencia is a former Australian Army veteran who retired in 2008 after 21 years of service. He's a husband, father of two boys, and a passionate advocate for self-sufficiency, a passion he's carried since his childhood. In 2011, Mark launched Self-Sufficient Me, a blog and YouTube channel that has since grown to over 2.5 million followers. His platform shares practical, down-to-earth advice on growing your own food, raising backyard animals like chickens, and living a more sustainable, fulfilling life. But Self-Sufficient Me goes beyond just gardening. Mark also explores how slowing down, staying active, and prioritizing mental and physical health can lead to greater self-fulfillment and resilience in a fast-paced world. Mark, welcome to the podcast.
G'day, Doug. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So, what was your original motivation for the blog and YouTube channel? Were you bored and needed something extra to do, or what?
No, not bored. I was really busy. Like I mean, busy in a good way. I noticed, like you've said, one of my aims was to slow life down, and it was, and it still is. In some ways, it's sped up, but the slowing down bit is I'm doing what I want to do, and I'm enjoying it. So if I'm out in the backyard working, it's for me, it's good fun, rather than uh, towards the end of my military career. I have to be honest, I loved my military career. It was a great stepping stone for me in my life. It got me away from a sort of ragged childhood where I was a bit of a rebel boy, like a lot of boys are. And I flunked high school, so I needed something to get me together. And the army did that for me, and I'll always be grateful for it. But towards the end of the career, I was getting frustrated. I'd done what I wanted to do, and I needed to go, to be completely frank. And part of that was to slow life down a bit with two young boys and my wife also in the military. We were very busy, and had a lot of pressure, but it was external pressure, it wasn't from within, and that was starting to destroy our family unit. And so, what we decided to do was have one foot on the ground, have one person at home. And that turned out to be me because Nina wanted to keep her career going. And so that was what I mean by slowing life down, was to do it our way. And it did, because it gave me the opportunity to be at home and to have a home base, and let Nina carry on with her career, which turned out to be really good because she just excelled. Then she didn't have to worry about anything at home, no cleaning, no cooking, no gathering of food. I did all that. But yeah, we dropped down to one salary, which was challenging with a mortgage and all the extreme costs that are being bestowed on our society. And it's just getting worse, it seems. But back then, you had the financial crisis. Everything was tough, 2008. And yeah, so we were taking this leap when we were advised we shouldn't be, but it actually worked out much better for us. And at the time, even though we were poorer, we were had more time and we were happier, and that's what got us through. And growing the food then was something out of necessity. It wasn't something that I wanted to do as a hobby or anything like that. It was something I had to do to be able to make ends meet, robbing Peter to pay Paul. I thought we moved out for some peace and quiet out of the city. We just saved up to get a mortgage for a 3 acre block. And so, what am I going to do with this land? It's not huge. It's not a farmland, so to speak, but it's big enough to grow a bunch of fruit trees and veggies. So I thought, let's turn that into money and start growing. One small packet of lettuce leaves can grow 1,000 lettuces. So let's just do that. And it worked out really well. Mm.
So your wife, you met her in the military, or did you know her before that? Or
Yeah, I did. I met her in the military. We were both recruit instructors at Kapooka together.
right, okay,
Yeah, so we 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 actually knew each other before we started to work directly together. I was in my third year at Kapooka. She was in her second, and we had done several platoons, but not together as instructors. And my final year, I was in a programming unit where I allocated tasks to other instructors, and that's where she worked as well, and that's where we met. But we never got together or anything. It wasn't until 3 years later, three in 2000, yeah, 2000, when East Timor blew up and Interfet, we had to go in there to settle the problems. And I was part of that lead force called Interfet. And we went over there. I was allocated the job. My job in the military at the time was logistics, but you're a jack of all trades, and yeah. So that's why I was recruit instructor. You could be that in any corps. It doesn't necessarily have to be infantry or anything like that. I was in transport at the time, and over in East Timor, I became an infantier. I was running an infantry section as a sergeant for security around Dili and doing patrols through Dili and checkpoints and that. And I was at a checkpoint where I had been out in the field for about 2 weeks. There was no luxuries there. There was no packets of chips or cans of Coke or nothing like that. It was flak jacket. It was insanely hot, and all your equipment. And I was standing on this checkpoint, and this bunch of medics came through. We used to call them pogues. Some people used to call me pogues when I was in the transport side of things. But this bunch of medics came through in this high ace, and I've let them through, and they were looked very happy and clean. And anyway, it stopped as it went through the checkpoint and reversed up. And Nina was in the back, and she's popped the window open, and she's gone, Mark, hello, and she's handed me this cold can of Coke. And anyway, she said, "We'll catch up later. It's great to see you." And and she gave me this Coke and fair dinkum. I still feel a bit ashamed today, but I just necked that thing, and I didn't share it with the rest of the squad. I just had to have it myself, and then squish it up and put it in my webbing. But yeah, so that's how we met that second time, and then. When we were leaving Delhi, we had a little bit of a shindig. Yeah, you had to keep these things on the low, but we were able to have a few, well, they say 2 beers per man uh, per day was the old saying in the military back then. It's nowhere near that now. You're not allowed to have any alcohol in operation at all. But I suppose they might still do it. But it was the end of the ops, so we were allowed to have a few beers, put it that way. And Nina, being our integrated into our unit by then and helping out through her medical service, we were allowed to invite some people from outside units. So she was continuing on, and so I invited her to this shindig. And towards the end of the night, she'd had more than she should have. And she had to make her own way back to her barracks at midnight, which was still a little dangerous, carrying her weapon and webbing. And anyway, my boss came up to me and he's gone, Sergeant Valencia, I've got new orders for you. I think you better escort uh, this young lady back to her barracks. I think she's had one too many, and I think you're the best person to be able to escort her back. And so, yeah, I walked her back to her barracks, which is about another 2 kilometers from where we were.
oh wow.
Yeah, and she had to secretly climb back into her stretcher and underneath a mosquito net without her boss finding out. And So it was, yeah, it was one of those things, and that's how and then when we got back into Australia, we started dating, and yeah, it just took off from there. So a long story, but I think it was a really nice way to re-meet and to start a relationship, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. And I'm just going to say, a lot of my listeners I know are from North America, and they're going to hear a little bit of Aussie lingo here that you've used and I use a little bit as well. And sometimes they'll be a bit scratching their head. What did he actually mean by that? And I loved before, like they'll be like scratching their heads, but I loved that earlier you said like you'd flunked high school. Like
Yeah.
I went to grade 10, like I passed high school, but like, like
Yeah.
I only went, I got what we call a junior certificate here in Australia. And for
Yeah.
America, like we used living overseas in a former US trust territory for many years. We have a
Yes.
lot of American friends and we're over there running this resorts, built the thing, da, 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 da. And then I'd quite happily tell them I only went to grade 10 and they
Yeah.
would be like, what? They've
Yeah.
just they finished high school and then went on to 6 or 8 years of
College.
college or
Yeah.
university,
Yeah.
and they were still on a just they had a job, but it was just normal. And us Aussie guys, because when I'm a little older than you, when I went to high school, you only stayed and finished year 11 and 12 if you knew you were going to become a school teacher, an architect, a doctor, or engineer or something. Then you went
Yeah.
on and finished high school. Apart from that,
Yeah.
we just like I was 15 and 2 weeks old when I started full-time work I was an apprentice, and
Yeah.
I loved it. I couldn't
Yeah.
wait to get out of school, and I just went, and then I was earning income and joined the fire service when I was 19 and just never looked back, just worked. And my workplace educated me and I got paid.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I got an advanced diploma in the fire service, they put us through the fire service
Yeah.
college, and just,
Yeah.
yeah, it
Yeah,
was,
yeah, that's right. It wasn't the end of the world if you weren't the sharpest, student
yeah,
back then. And I
yeah,
do remember that period, I remember that I was on the edge there. I shouldn't have gone 11 and 12. I could have left at 10, but then I wasn't good enough even to get a trade, I don't think, at that point in my life. I had friends that did, and really handy blokes. One of them I met again after 20 years. And now I play tennis with him regularly. He just lives around the corner. Kerry, he left in grade 10, became a butcher, and I did an apprenticeship in butchering. And I was always impressed with him and how he and his family, just he just left in grade 10 and just said, like, I've had enough of school. For me, my family urged me to stay on to hopefully improve and just get a few more years of something in my brain to help me in the later life. And it turned out that it didn't help much at all, except I couldn't join the army until I was 17 anyway. So it was probably the best thing to do for me if I look back. But it's not like it taught me a heck of a lot. I just spent most of my time in the toilets having a durry, a cigarette, or wagging school and writing funny things to the teachers in the exams and for them to read out. Um, Later, I found out that I had a bit of a knack for poetry, so I had that artistic brain. Maybe that's why I turned into a YouTube creator. But yeah, who knew back then? But the thing was, there was a path for me, and that was the military. And it was really a great path for someone like me.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the military educate you, like they
It
take you on
did.
and take you
It did
through, and
educate me, Doug.
yeah,
Like, I mean, literally.
mm.
So right from the get-go, you had to learn things. You had to add up things in your head, even if it was bullets and bombs. You had to do those things. And then if you wanted to get promoted, which I did,
Guys, if you're on a path of developing your intuition, and I know you are, that's why you're listening here, then the Neurovisor is a tool worth checking out. It uses light and sound to guide your brain into deeper states of awareness, helping you quiet the noise, tap into your inner knowing, and strengthen your intuitive muscle. And who doesn't want that? There's no pills, no fluff, just 11 minutes a day to reset your mind and reconnect with your instincts. I've bought myself one last Christmas and I've added it to my daily practice, and the shifts are real. This is not a paid ad, but if you use the link in the show notes for more information, I do receive a small percentage of the purchase price. I highly recommend you check it out.
I was ambitious. You had to then go back to school, ironically, and it's changed a little bit now. But back when I was going from sergeant to warrant officer, um, you had to do a educational course, and you had to go 6 weeks away at Broadmeadows, and sit in the classroom and do English and maths and pass that. And that is that's what you had to do, and there was several courses that you had to do to get promoted, and that was really good for me. Mm.
Yeah. I can remember when we were getting sent away on all our courses, we used to equate them by how much weight we would put on, because they would send us away. Like there was one, um, they'd send us to this one place, and the kitchen there, they would just put out these massive big tubs, like 10-liter tubs, like three of them of ice cream after the meal. And we would and you served yourself. And we're just like, there's 2 dozen fire officers there, and you just can't do it. Oh, I just went away on a 2-week, 3 kilogram course, or and we would do the 6-week live-ins and all that, go home on the
Yeah,
weekend. And yeah, just ridiculous. And no wonder the guys who were like going up the ranks were getting physically bigger in size, because they just
yeah,
feed you up like phenomenal amounts. There was just these women in the kitchen that just loved to serve men, and they would just, because back then the fire service back in my day was still a boys' club. We
yes, yeah.
After I left 20 years ago, the females started coming in, but then that's why
It'd
I'm
be
not being
like,
sexist saying that it
yeah,
was a boys' club. It was just all men at
it
that
would have
day.
been like the police force.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
no, it was far worse, far worse.
yeah.
Yeah, they literally. I was involved. The very first female fire, the very first female in Queensland who attempted to join the fire service. I was there on her physical testing day, and there was 10 physical tests. And a lot of people are going to hate me for what I'm about to say, but only two of the tests you could fail. And I was in charge of one of those two. The others
Oh,
were all just time,
yeah.
and it was a physical test. And like I was too scared to do it myself in case I couldn't do it. That's
Mm,
how difficult it was. And there was a
mm,
couple of guys, coming through that didn't get through, and I had to read them this paragraph that's sorry you failed, and they went off.
mm,
And of course she got there. And like I actually discriminated in her favor to try and like physical. I let her have 4 or 5 goes, which
mhm.
none of the guys got that.
Yeah,
She couldn't even do it 1%. It was very like taxing. Like I say, I was too scared. I eventually, when no one was looking, had to go at it and managed to do it, but very
mhm.
difficult. But yeah, I had to write big reports and everything, because she was the first attempt at a female joining our state fire
Yeah,
service. But yeah, so then I left a couple of years after that, and then they came. So
yeah.
it was just literally a boys' club when I was there. But
Yeah, the military frustrated me in a little way, like that when I was a recruit instructor. The the standards were changing. I was right in the middle of that change too, and that's probably when the rot started to set in the army. And I'm not saying that was when women started coming in. My particular example is I had a young Indian fella who was Indian ethnic and sort of spoke broken English. He wasn't a very good recruit, and we tried our best to get him through. But about the course went for 13 weeks all up, 12 weeks really, and by about week 9, you could see that he wasn't going to get through. And the real kicker was we took him to the range. He was part of my section, so I was responsible for him in the platoon. And we took him to the range, and he was dead set dangerous with his weapon handling. So I had to basically start the machine and the machination forward of getting him removed, which I did. And at that time, you had to, as his section commander, you had to go and sit with the board, which was a colonel and a few other officers, and explain in front of this young recruit why they just wouldn't make it and why he needed to go, which is a really difficult thing. I hated
yeah,
doing that. And but unfortunately, what haunted me was a few years later, just a few years later, they lowered the standards, and that I always remember that particular person probably would have made it through after that, and many others like him that didn't get through would have made it in a few years later. I don't know, maybe they could have rejoined or something, but
Mm.
it just felt like the standards we left drop was really disappointing for me because there was a purpose to it, and I think the standards were actually right after many decades and years of sorting them. I don't think they needed to be lowered at all, but they were, and that haunted me a little bit. Mm.
Well, yeah, especially with, mishandling of like a weapon. And you,
Yeah.
you hear the stories of all the conscription with Vietnam and all those sort of places and the friendly fire,
Mm.
and just through potentially through incompetence, just because they didn't particularly want to be there. And it wasn't that they were just slacking off, but
Mm.
they possibly shouldn't have been there. Like you said, they didn't meet
Mm.
but with conscription, it's just take them all, just about,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Now, I mentioned in the intro that
Mm.
you have the passion of Steve Irwin, and for
Yeah.
those, I mean, there's a lot of Americans who love Steve, and for obvious reasons. You've like where you live now is, in his sort of obviously
Yeah.
not next door, but you're what
Yeah.
probably less than
Half
40,
an hour.
50 miles. Yeah, half hour
Yeah.
drive from
Yeah.
where Steve lived and where his Australia Zoo and all that still is today. Yeah.
Mm.
So you're in that area. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and speaking of the military, Steve Irwin, and I think maybe still today, if you go through and hold your military ID up, they'll let you through, military and their families through for free.
Oh,
They
really?
did back then.
Well,
Yeah.
at Australia Zoo. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, oh, look, maybe they don't now. I mean, things are tight and
Mm,
everything, but yeah, you used to be able to just get in for free, and of course, you'd spend up a little bit more than you usually would
yeah.
to give a bit back. Extra ice creams like you're talking
Yeah.
about for the kids and
Yeah.
that type of
Yeah.
thing. But it was really nice gesture. He was
Yeah.
a generous and fantastic guy, and
Yeah.
I was invited to the Steve Irwin the gala. They have a gala every year, a fundraising gala.
Mm,
A couple of years back, I went to that. I was invited through YouTube to be at a YouTube table, and I had a fantastic time, my wife and I, and it was a really terrific event. Very much worth it if you're a businessman or whatever, and you want a good time. That you be prepared to fork out maybe a few dollars, but that is a really good event. They had the country singer, the famous Australian country singer there, and they had Rove live as
yep.
the
Compare sort of
yeah,
role.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, really good time. They're a fantastic family. They're very generous, and they do, I think, a really great service. Mm.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, no, he was a great, or still is really an amazing Aussie icon.
Mm.
And yeah, like I say, when we were living overseas, we had a lot of American friends, and I think when he passed, we were over there, and we'd have. I remember one guest, he said, like his grandma still was crying, like that she cried
Mm.
for a week nonstop when he went,
Yeah,
and yeah, it was premature, but
yeah,
yeah, legend in his definitely in his own lifetime, that's for sure, even
yeah.
before he went. So yeah. So when we talked a week or so ago, you mentioned the story of you leaving the army, and we talked there about how you just had like this intuitive knowing sort of thing. Did you just want to share a little bit more on that?
Yeah, well, that like I talked a little bit about it. It got to that point where there was everyone. I don't. There was everyone except my wife and I were thinking we should continue on in the military. All my superiors, all my peers, all my family, well, except for my mother, maybe. She probably had reservations, but she was going to just back me no matter what. Usually does. But yeah, Nina's family was apprehensive about me leaving the military and Nina eventually leaving in a couple of years after and then going into the reserves is what she did. But because it didn't make a lot of sense at the time, like I said, the money situation was tight. The economy was bad. So if you're in a public service job, you're probably best wait it out and sit in it instead of leaving it. But we knew as a family unit as a partnership that it was the right time to go and move on. And you're talking about intuition. That was my intuition. It was against all this other noise. I was clear. I needed to move on, and it was better for me for some reason. I knew I could make it uh, out in the civvy world at that time, and it was the right thing to do. And so I backed myself, and my wife backed me, and she backed the decision, and it was time to go. And yeah, it was a rough leaving the military was bitter because people didn't like that I was going. I had a superior say in my farewell speech that I was on my way for bigger and better things in the military, that I was going to get promoted soon. And he was actually quite annoyed at he had to give this talk of me leaving. Um, yeah, I remember my sergeant saying later that when I was talking, he was behind me shaking his head. That's how upset he was at my decision to leave, which was pretty strange. So it was a bit
Yeah.
of a bitter thing for everything. Some family members thought I was crazy, um, and even back briefed Nina about that. So there was all those things going on, and then when I left and we started living here, and we'd only just moved out here, and then we realised as well that it was as hard as we thought it would be. That we weren't getting as much money in. We still had to pay all these bills. We had two young boys with 4 and 2. They were growing. They needed things. They ate a lot, and so there's lots of expenses, and it was tough. And while I maxed out a credit card, and then we got another one, and we robbed Peter to pay Paul, and till he stabilized, and then I started growing heaps of food in almost panic, and but we were still happier. That was strange. And anyway, we moved and we got through all that. And I learned all these new skills about growing veggies and raising chickens and poultry. We kept quail for meat, and it happens to be one of the densest proteins in the world and one of the fastest growing animals in the world. And so I just pumped out heaps of quail, and we had good, cheap, lean meat. And yeah, so we just did our best. And then at the same time, Nina concentrated on her career and started getting promoted and getting better. And she ended up getting really good jobs. That helped a lot. And then started to have more money flowing in. And at the end of the day, yeah, it all worked out for the best.
Yeah. So
So the intuition was correct in my mind. Anyway, well, I don't know
yeah.
how you'd explain it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so the pressure from the world would have been easy to
Yeah.
like just stay what you were doing. And
Yep.
and I know like our stories sound similar because I'd only been in the
Yeah.
fire service 10 years. And so in my very late 20s, we decided to make a move out and take three young boys, the oldest being 7, out of taking them overseas and building a scuba resort in the middle of the Pacific.
Yeah,
And
that's an
yeah,
incredible story.
yeah. And I remember one of my work colleagues coming up to me, and he had 5 kids, and he said, "Doug, I admire what you're doing, but," he goes, "it's just that is so scary. Like I've got 5 kids and a mortgage and everything, and I couldn't do it." And I said to him, "Bill, there's one thing that's more scary than that to me, and it's getting to 60 years old and saying 2 words, if only, if
Mm,
only I'd tried." And
yeah.
Mark, I'm now 61, and now I do not live in that regret of trying, because we had decided if it all went bad, we were still in like if we're in our early 30s and this whole resort thing that we're building goes bad, we never get
Mm.
it finished built, or we open the doors and no customers come, whatever, and the bank takes us back office, that we were young and energetic enough to start again,
Mm.
back to Australia with our tail between our legs. But that didn't happen. It went, extremely well, etc.
Yeah.
But we tried, and that was definitely, there was, this, I won't go into it because this is not about my story, but there was multiple synchronicities and intuition and all sorts of things in hindsight looking at it. So it's
But
yeah.
if you wondered if it did go bad, what then? So I'm sure you would be looking back like I do now on my life, getting closer to 60 than I was 50. So it just feels like a tragedy that life is going by so fast. But if I look back now, I've had a couple of careers, long careers. I mean, I've been doing YouTube now for 14 years. I can't believe it. And I was a home dad, which is pretty cool, and in the military for 21 years, and I'm still nearly 60. But if I look back and things didn't go right after I left the military, um, at me now would go, who cares? That was a really good experience. We did it our way. I did it my way. I followed my nose. I wasn't reckless. I'm not. There's a between being reckless and silly, and then being more calculated and following your intuition. So I'll make that clear. I wasn't just throwing everything away, and I was, we were doing our best to mitigate things going wrong and trying our hardest. But if I look back and it didn't quite work out, I mean, I could be a security guard now. I mean, there may be no YouTube, no company, no media company or anything. I would still be really happy with the decisions I made, for sure. I've got no doubt that that I left and followed a different path right at the right time without giving in to the other pressures that were telling me to stay, because I was the only one to really know what I wanted back then, and my family.
Yeah. Because I believe that, where does our intuition come from? For me, and I don't expect anyone else to believe this, but I believe it comes from benevolent forces that we can't see,
Yeah.
that love us
Mm.
and want the best for us, and they're constantly trying to get these intuitive messages, if we want to use that word, or they're trying to get information to us, whatever
Yeah.
way they can, whatever way we will allow it to come through, and to give us these experiences, to whatever, for whatever reason they're getting these messages to us, and we don't always follow them. Like, there's not a man on the planet who wouldn't say at least once, and, like, from the richest to the poorest,
Mm.
um I knew I should have done that, or I knew
Mm.
I shouldn't have done that. Like, we knew at the time that we should or shouldn't have done something, and so it doesn't,
Mm.
my world is now, let's help men make one better decision a day. If we can
Mm.
all make one better decision, like over a period of a year, that's 365 better decisions than we would have made. Like,
Mm.
that's life changing for everybody. No, not just for the individual, but for those around them, for everyone that they come in contact with, because they're brighter, they're happier, they're more enjoyable to be around. People can look at their example, and it
Mm.
just makes the whole world shine. So, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting subject, that one. Very deep intuition. Yeah, I mean, it's often talk. Did you often talk about women's intuition? That's what I always ever heard growing up, and that not men's intuition. Um, so yeah, it's an interesting, deep subject.
yeah. And women's intuition, like, there's many, many different forms and types of intuition. There's one scientific thing that talks about women's intuition, where when they become pregnant, their brain literally rewires into a similar patterns to the fetus, so that the
Mm.
mother is then, so the fetus doesn't change to mum
Mm.
changes to the baby. And so
Mm.
that, because for while she's pregnant and for the first couple of years, she has to keep that child alive. That's her responsibility there.
Mm.
So there's intuitive messages. So is now getting messages on what to eat, what to do once the baby's born.
mm,
It's hot,
mm.
it's cold, it's hungry, it needs changing, like
I
whatever.
suppose that makes sense. Yeah.
And so, I mean, scientists have proved this now that mum's brain, part of her brain rewires, and so that they're connected together. And it's
Mm,
like, you know, just that's how what needs to happen. And that is not the only way intuition works. It works many, 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 many different ways. But that's one way why in our Western developed world, because we think we're so clever, we think we're so much more clever than the indigenous tribes, and that sort of thing, that we just put it down as, like you said, and I thought
mm.
that way for so long too, women's intuition. Because my wife would say to our boys when they were like 3 and 4, don't you ever lie to mummy because I know exactly what you're thinking. And those boys are in their late 30s now. And if you went up to them and I said that to them, they go, oh, yeah, she knew exactly what we were thinking all the time. She did. She was,
Yeah.
and,
Mm,
and I was the one that struggled with intuitive. I'm like, God, like how is she so? I'm thinking it's
mm,
always being psychic. Yes, it's
mm.
that, but it's not that. It's other things too. It's just this inner gut knowing. My boys
Yeah.
will say to me now, Dad, how do you know that? Like, like what YouTube channel? What they're meaning is, what YouTube channel did you get that off? What book did you read that from? What ebook did you listen to? Like,
Yeah.
which podcast was that on?
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I just know it. But you
Mm,
can't just know something that I just know it because
mm.
it's already happened. It's already been successful. And that's what they're sort of like that worked. Like, how did you find that out? And I'm
Mm.
like, I don't know, just know it. And so some intuition comes through with just an inner knowing.
Yeah.
It comes a million different ways. So um, and for me, you could call it the sixth sense, but really, if you really studied the history of the world a lot, you'd find it's just a normal sense. It's not that weird. I just think it's our current culture that we are in has denied it for whatever reason. And I'm just
Mhm.
trying to get us back to where people used to be. Like you trying to get people back to where we used to be. Like I got
Mm.
15 years ago, we went to Italy for the first time and we're riding trains. And man, you want to talk about self-sufficient, get on a train in Italy and go through and you
Mm.
see everybody's backyard.
Yeah.
Every second backyard has got tomatoes growing everywhere, like
Yeah.
vegetables growing everywhere. And they're tiny little yards. Like these are
Yep.
very small backyards and they're
Mm.
half full of vegetables. And I'm like, I was
That's right.
shocked. I was pleasantly shocked. I was like,
Yeah.
wow, people. So you're just trying to get people to go back to how we used to be. So am I, because,
Mm.
like you can think, oh, there was shamans in some of the tribes or the witch doctor or whatever who got these different messages. It's, the men who used to go and like the hunter gatherers,
Mm.
they would go out. You imagine if you and I got dropped in the middle of, the Amazon or Africa or somewhere in the jungle, and we had some spears or things like that, and we were hungry. Like
Mm.
we would start to work out we have to be very quiet. We have to use our intuition. We have to listen. We
Mm.
have to think. We have to sense the wind direction. All these different things so that we can get
Yeah.
close enough to this animal to bring it down so that we can sustain ourselves. And
Yep.
men back then, their intuition would have been heightened when they were out hunting,
Mm.
or they would die.
Mm.
So yeah, and I'm not
Yeah.
wanting men to go out and hunt, but I'm just wanting to use it in their everyday life.
Yeah. Well, it might not be just useful, for food. That's the like why I promote it so much is that the healing nature of the brain and the giving yourself a break. I mean, you might be an accountant in the city, in a high level stressful job, and then coming home and watching the idiot box and trying to unwind, maybe reading or something like that. But I reckon the best thing you could do would be to go out the backyard and tend to a veggie patch, or even if it's not edibles. I think edibles, if you're going to garden, why not do edibles as well? They're so useful and so easy to do. But it's it's amazing how much stress relief it is when you're not only out in nature and watching something grow, but you get a lot of satisfaction out of harvesting some veg, out of the beauty of a garden. watching other things that you've grown come in and enjoy your garden, like birds and other animals and that type of thing. I've had, I, I released a video the other day, and I do every year on Memorial Day for the states. They have a similar thing like our Anzac Day, and every time I do that video, I get a string of emails come in. Blokes don't often write a lot in the comments section. The fellas will like to email, sort of not anonymously, but they prefer not to air it in a public sense. So they'll email me quietly on the side and give me these stories of how gardening actually did help, in some cases, save their life. Very deep and meaningful emails, and they're not just scattered throughout. These are I've got hundreds over the last decade of these emails of blokes that have found getting out into nature, maybe bushwalking as well, getting onto the beach, doing some fishing, has really helped them with their PTSD, with their stressful lives, with their suicidal thoughts. And so, yeah, it's one of my big motivating factors is to promote self-sufficiency and getting your hands dirty a bit or getting out into nature, because I know it works and it worked with me. See, when I started as getting into self-sufficiency because it was a necessity out of the thought it would save money and all that, I found really quickly that it was helping me with my own PTSD, with my own pain management problems from my injuries from my service. And I've got some significant injuries. And it helped me a great deal. And I thought, this is really excellent. It's giving me a whole lot more than just food back on the table. It's giving me a better life, and it's helping me out. And yeah, it was something I really wanted to share with the rest of the world. And I was lucky that my little soapbox got recognized, and people are all around the world watch my backyard antics now.
Yeah. And when you talk about antics, like, on here, you're quite sedate, but, like I
Yeah.
compared you to Steve Irwin earlier,
Yeah.
and you do, yeah, you get animated, you get on there, you're
Yeah.
passionate about your craft.
Mm,
And yeah. And what you're talking about there before, it just reminded me about 35 years ago, I heard the term most men lead lives of quiet desperation. And like you were saying, like these men that are emailing you now, they
mm.
were leading lives of quiet desperation. And they've,
Yeah.
either through you or through whatever source, they've found a way to help alleviate that quiet desperation that's within those suicidal thoughts, those
Mm,
just or not even that level, just whatever level where it's just, you're just desperate inside. And I remember sharing something with my wife a couple of days ago, just like she was going through a bit of a, you know self-doubt sort of rough patch sort of thing. And so I just shared something with her. I said, this happened like in the last year or two with me. And she's like, what? I never knew that. And I said, no, I've never told anyone. I said, I'm only telling you now to let you realize it's not just you. Like,
mm,
I'm like an iceberg. You see this tiny bit on top, but it's all under the
mm,
surface.
mm.
And not all men are like that, but that's, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, we keep it in. But, hey, if you're keeping it in, you struggle then to get out in the garden, get your hands, like physically get
Yeah.
your hands in the dirt
Yeah.
and help, I mean,
That's
that helps ground us physically as well. It's what we
yeah.
we need.
That's not a bad thing. I mean, being a male for me in the family, you're supposed to be an iceberg. You're supposed to be a rock. That's your job. This men are supposed to be crying every 5 minutes and pouring your feelings out. That's not right, in my opinion. Yes, there's a time to cry and all that, and there's a time to be emotional. But most of the time, especially if you have a family, your job is to be the thing that everyone cries on. That you're the one that has to hold up and be the one position of focus, or the one position that's grounded and stuck like a log in mud that people can hold on to and have a steady way to get through tough times. Or that's really your job. And men should understand that. When you understand that, yes, there is a time to be emotional, but your job really is like the line of the pack, is to protect, is to serve, and is to do your best so that other people can have happiness and safety in their life. Then it becomes more clearer about what your role is. It's not all about me, me, me. It should not be. You'll get more joy out of looking after others than yourself. And I'm not saying you don't look after yourself at all. Sometimes, well, often looking after yourself and staying strong and healthy is the way that you can help others and you can help your family and extended family. That's what your purpose is in life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I hear you on that.
Mm.
Just when you talk about emotions there, like, and I get it because often when us men talk about emotions, we think of like, oh, things that are going to make it like make us cry or whatever. But
Yeah.
also we could have emotions where our footy team it's the grand final and they just hit the winning point and there's 2 seconds to go and we won and we're like, yeah, bring it
Yeah.
on. That's emotion as well.
Yes.
And so it's not like we want to suppress them all. It's not like you have to sort of sit there and not barrack for your footy team. But
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I look at emotions I don't look at them as good or bad. I just look at them as ones we enjoy and ones we don't. Because you might enjoy an emotion that I don't, and vice versa. It's not, there's not like two teams of emotions, all the good ones and all the bad ones.
Yeah. No,
They're,
that's true.
they're different, and they have a purpose. And
Yeah.
I believe when we experience them, ones we enjoy or ones we don't, they change our frequency for a very short time. There's like a wave in the ocean hitting you, and it's like you get hit, and you get wet and then it goes away. You're still wet. What are you going to do with that now? You're going to sit and cry because you're still wet, or you're going to jump up and go and catch the next wave, or you're going to go back to shore, or whatever you're going
Mm.
to do. You don't sort of stand there after the wave's gone and going, I'm wet, I'm wet, I'm wet. No, like
Mm.
get on. It hit you. Yes, that's going to happen. And if you want to go out at the beach, like you live near the ocean, I live near the ocean, you know, you're going to get
Yeah.
hit with a wave. And you've got to learn to ride it in or go under it or over it or whatever you're going to do and
Yeah.
and balance it and some men, and I'm envious and jealous of them, they've learnt how to ride the waves with boogie
Mm.
boards, surfboards, and have a whale of a time. I tried that once and didn't really work for me.
I'm not real good at that either.
No, no, and I do look at them with envy because, and a couple of my sons surf and that, and I was like, yeah, I wish I could do that, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, so they're advanced. If you looked at the waves as emotion, that they're advanced at
Mm.
handling emotion in certain ones.
Yeah.
Like a certain wave, how it comes in and that sort of thing. But
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
I guess I'm talking about being stoic,
yeah,
um, and how important that also is. I think there's been a lot of confusion over this last 20 years about men are supposed to be sharing their feelings all the time, and men are supposed to be emotional like women are. We all, but we're not. We're not women. And so, but yes, I also agree that there's other emotions, and men can show emotions, especially with other men. We go to Tangalooma, 8 of us, every year, usually around November. That's my old schoolmates and friends that I've known for a long time, and we get up to all sorts of mischief, and all of us are the same age, and it we have a great time, and it's very emotional. Sometimes there's tears, and it's a good thing. It's in the right time, it's in the right place, discussing things and being nostalgic and all that. And it's important to get some of those emotions out and to have a cry occasionally. I'm not saying you don't have any emotion at all. What I'm saying is it's a time and place, but where you're being euphoric in the sense of your team winning, or you're out with your mates and you're having a beer and you're having fun, or you're having a quiet conversation about a friend who's maybe lost their wife, or their dog or whatever, or feeling down a bit and you shed a bit of a tear, or you're at home and the whole world's gone to shit and you're there, you can't be the blubbering mess at that point. If you're in a section attack on and there's the enemy all around you, and you're leading the squad, you can't be cowering in the pit while people are dropping around you. You need to be organizing yourself and running the show, and otherwise it's all lost. So you have to lead. And so there are situations where maybe this is intuitive as well, where you have to pick the time and pick the emotion right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, as a
Absolutely. Yeah.
man, if
Yeah.
you're talking about being a real man, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
I'd say it is.
Yeah, I hear you, and I know what you mean. In the last 20 years, there's a lot of things, and it's like I actually one of the reasons why, because I started this podcast back in 21, you know, peak COVID, and this wasn't the reason I started the podcast, but as when it was hitting, I'm thinking, yeah, if I teach men to develop their intuition a bit more, to get their own knowledge from within, because COVID was a very challenging time. There was so much differing information, like like information coming from all sides that was conflicting, and it's like, who do you believe? Like,
Mm,
like, and it was more conflicting than normal. So I was sort of thinking, well, man, if guys could go within themselves and get a feel. Now you might get a feel for some like a subject, and it's you run this way with it, and I get a feel for the same subject, and I might run 90 degrees off over here with it. I think we're both right for us.
mm, mm,
Like there's not, and I think that was a part of it too. I'm thinking if men can realize that they can go within themselves and get answers from this invisible benevolent force that likes us, loves us, then we're getting the right answer for us in those circumstances rather
mm,
than there's no one blanket answer for everyone. Because we're all very different people, we've all had very different experiences. Our physical makeup is different to everybody else's. Our environment, your environment's different to mine.
mm,
Like you've got like you can walk out your backyard and take your pick of all these super healthy veggies everywhere.
mm.
I've got a tiny little piddly veggie garden compared to yours. I've got like 50 fruit trees on my property, and I've got citrus coming out of my ears right now. They're in the roadside stall trying to sell them, like
Yeah,
made up the road. He's dug up a heap of turmeric the other day. Hey Doug, do you want to sell this in your stall? My
that's great.
my young fella needs a bit of cash, so I give him some cash. And
Yeah.
so I've got, like that sort of sitting in there. And um so, but yeah, not compared to your backyard, it's extremely different. We're in different environments, we're different,
Yeah.
everything's. So it's just if we can all learn what's one better decision for us today. We're never going to always get it right. We're never always going to get it wrong. There was,
Mm,
so there was a big multimillionaire I read years ago, and he said, if I get it right 51% of the time, I'm ahead.
mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're just trying to improve and go on. Yeah.
I suppose it's not being arrogant. It's just owning your decisions and yeah, do I say it, being a man about it. And just like if you've made the wrong decision, you so what? You're not arrogant. You're not shrugging your shoulders and going, "Who cares?" But you're just evaluating it, and I won't make that mistake again. But I'm not upset. I had to make a decision, and I made one, and I'm still going in a direction. I'm not stagnating. I'm still moving, and I'm owning my decisions. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
excellent. So I'm just looking at your T-shirt now, and it's got "Self-Sufficient Me" on, which is
Yeah.
the logo for your YouTube channel and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I've recently, yep, there you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, so probably like mid-COVID, my like how I came across you is through my
Yeah.
wife. She had, through circumstances, fractured a spine, and she was literally on the
Oh.
couch for a month. And so she stopped watching television, started watching YouTube videos. and you were one of the ones she started watching and all that sort of stuff. And then I've recently now discovered you've also got Self-Sufficient Me 2 is a second YouTube channel.
I do, yeah.
And
That's
what's that
like,
one about?
well, it's a bit of an overflow, and I'm reviving that. I started it as a bit of an overflow and to throw some behind the scenes stuff in there, like we're doing some home renos and that type of thing, and some clips that I thought I'd put on there before YouTube started to get into the shorts and you had TikTok and all that. So it was before that. Um, but now I think I will revive it. Well, I already started to. I turned it into Self-Sufficient Me Extra. So instead of two, I took the two off because the Self-Sufficient Me 2 was a play at the time as the Me Too era as well.
Right.
So it wasn't lost on me. And I thought, I was just a bit cheeky and I thought I'd put that there. I wasn't really thinking much, but I think Extra is better. And what I'm going to do is going to do some short, what we'd call Soldiers 5 reviews on equipment, gardening equipment, whatever, and very informal type stuff that content that's going to take me really quick to put together, but hopefully helpful for people and cut through nonsense and all that. So I want to do that. I was thinking of the self-sufficient mind and doing a series on that, and I wasn't sure if that could go. I wanted to write more on my blog about self-sufficiency and the way I think and the way the way that I get around the noise in the modern world. And so it was going to be a series called Self-Sufficient Mind, just like self-sufficiency, um, but in the mind. So yeah, sounds weird that I'm talking about it, but that's what I want to do with that second channel. Revive it a bit. There's about 50,000 subscribers, and they're all just sitting there, sort of waiting for a bit of extra content that I haven't put out for about 12 months or so. And then we've got Self-Sufficing Me. That's our fishing channel. That's just a small little hobby channel of mine that I have a bit of fun with my son and friends that come out on the boat and go fishing. And I've been speaking to your son, Scott, about that.
Mhm.
He might do a bit of editing for us. So we're talking about that at the moment, and we might see how that goes and help us out with the editing side because I'm stretching myself very thin trying to edit all these channels and keeping them all going. Yeah.
Yeah. And so where you head out in the boat fishing, do you?
Yeah, out in Moreton Bay
Oh,
and
okay.
past the
Nice.
bay out into past Moreton Island into the deep sea if the weather's good enough.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, love
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I was always dreamt of getting a boat, and when I left the army, I was able to get a little bit of a superannuation in bulk from leaving. It was about 100,000 I was able to get, and my thought always leading up to that was that I would spend that on getting a boat and you know. Um, it was a Haynes Hunter was what I wanted. Uh, but then in reality, when I left, it went into trying to pay some of the mortgage, getting rid of some credit card debt, a small little micra for Nina so she could travel around, and there was no boat and
Yeah.
no capacity at all to get that. But yeah, I worked hard and did well at YouTube and was able to finally, a couple of years back, get a boat, and then I upgraded just recently to a bigger one. So
That's what I was going to ask you. How big's the boat?
it's 7 meters, so just on 7 meters. It's a Staby Craft 2250. So it's yeah, with the rear deck, the rear platform, it takes it out to about 7 meters all up.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm,
Because when we lived overseas with the dive resort, we had three boats. And I used to say, I'm going to like, because the cost of running the boats,
mm.
I was like, particularly over there.
Even back then,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I used to say, I'm going to empty the swimming pool. I'm going to fill it with $5 bills. and like just put a net over the top, like because it's just
Yeah.
like, and they'll just blow away. It's like how much money I spend on boats,
Yeah.
like yeah, outboard engine parts and maintenance and
Yeah.
engine blow ups and oh man, like yeah,
Oh,
boats.
it's expensive. It's getting
Oh
expensive now.
yeah,
You know, if you
yeah,
go out and you don't catch any fish, and that happens to me because I'm not the best at fishing, you're coming back at a loss for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, if you get a good catch for the day, yeah, it saves you buying meat or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It just offsets it there very well. But
Yeah. And
yeah,
I use the scraps for fertilizer, and I use every bit of the fish,
yeah, yeah,
even the scales.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Well, what do you do with it? Like they going in for compost or
Yeah. Yeah. Go back
yeah,
into the garden,
yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah, or I ferment them, throw them in a bucket of water, sometimes a bit of sugar, and
yeah,
then just let them sit and rot down, and they'll turn into a liquid fertilizer.
yeah. And you've got obviously got all these videos on your YouTube channel for those who are interested in those
I
sort of
haven't,
things.
I've got, I've shown a little bit of the fish fertilizer, but I haven't done a direct fish fertilizer YouTube video yet. But
Right.
but I am going to. There's two different ways that I've made it. Like a fermented fish in like a beer. You know how you can ferment beer in one of those beer
Hmm.
round plastic vats
Yep.
with the little um, bubbler thing on top, the airlock.
Hmm.
And yeah, I've done it that way, and I've also done it in just a bucket. And I'm working out which way's best and the easiest to do it. Yeah,
Yeah, and there's where you go.
yeah, I put a little bit of sugarcane juice that I've got from our own sugarcane because with the fermenting method, you want to add a bit of extra sugar apparently to it. This is what I read, and so I had some sugar cane and I juiced it and I threw that juice into that to see if I could stir it up. It already started fermenting the sugar cane juice and started getting coagulant. And I
Mhm.
put that in there and it did bubble away. I'm not sure if that makes it better or not. But the other experiment I had going was just threw it in a bucket with water and nothing else. And it went surprisingly well. After a couple of months, it just turned into a black liquid and that I could water down and put on the plants. And so I've got to test them both and see which one is better. I'm really actually very excited to see. I've got to do a like your maybe 10 plants in each, maybe lettuce, something that grows really fast and easy, and then have a control group and then have one with each different fertilizer group. So about 30 plants all up and just see which lot grows better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
getting scientific.
And then I can stitch that into a video and I think that'd be pretty exciting, yeah. For
Yeah.
me anyway, or gardeners. Mm.
Yeah, because I mean, your standard thing to buy like is fish emulsion liquid, and you water it down and that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, if you can make if you're a fisherman and you're getting the fish guts and heads and tails and things for free,
Yeah.
might as well use it. Yeah. Yeah. I remember my dad, he where we used to live, there was a creek nearby, and um as when he would come back from fishing, he would, gut all the fish and everything, wrap it up in newspaper, and then as we would drive past that creek, he'd throw it out the window into the creek. And it was all the water, the newspaper was going to
Yeah.
break down, and it was all
Yeah.
just fish guts inside it. But yeah, I mean, he wouldn't, and he didn't grow veggies, but he had a rose garden for mum and all sorts of stuff that he'd made and all that. And my
Hmm.
my grandfather lived very close to the border down here, like on the Gold Coast, like very close. Funny thing was, he was a fisherman and he never drove a car. He pushed his boat on the small trailer down to the water, and he would always bring home heaps of seaweed. And so I remember my grandfather's veggie garden on a very small plot of land. It huge big cabbages and cauliflowers and all that sort of stuff. But he'd always have it seemed to me when I was a little kid, it was always like 12 inches thick of seaweed all around it everywhere, and
Yeah. Yeah.
because he was
Seaweed's
getting that for
pretty good.
free. To go down there, fill up the old potato sack, the Hessian bags, fill
Yeah.
it up with seaweed, and yeah,
Yeah. So even back then they realized seaweed was good for the garden.
yeah, yeah,
How
and
did
it
he
was
push?
free.
How did he push a
But
trailer?
I just I've got memories of being a
Yeah.
5-year-old, mum putting me on the bus. They had a bus stop at their door, like literally at the door. So she told the bus driver, like, I'm five. And like
Mm.
he gets off at, this at Central Street, 35 Central Street. Boom. I get off, grandma's sitting at the door waiting for me. And I go, and then granddad goes, okay, we're going fishing, boy. And walk with me. And he just starts pushing the boat out and we just pushed it down the street. And I mean, it would have been four, probably at least 300 meters minimum.
Yeah.
And got it down. And then obviously it was sandy. And then so he's pushed it down. And he was, gee, my dad was in his 30s when he had me. So granddad, he was retired. Like he was in his 60s. And then he's pushed this boat down and back when he would go
Tough
fishing.
old buggers back then, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. And he was a tough old nut, like it just a grumpy, tough old nut. But he was
Yeah.
kind to me. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, and what a different world when you think about it. Who
Yeah.
would put their 5-year-old on a public bus, pay the
Yeah.
driver, and say this is where he's getting off? And then
Yeah.
I can't even remember because mum didn't have a car back then to drive. I'm trying to even remember how I got home. Probably grandma put me on the same bus and told the bus driver drop in. But we didn't have a bus stop out the front of our house. I can tell you, like
No,
it was up the street, like around the
but
corner up the street.
mate, I can remember walking to kindy. I
Yeah,
did. I
yeah,
bloody walked to kindy. My mother would have showed me probably the first time, and then after that, I was on my own
yep,
with my little lunchbox. Yeah, and yeah, I still can't get over it because there's
yep.
no way
Mm,
would my like at 5 or 6 year old be walking to kindergarten,
yeah,
my kids.
yeah,
Not a chance, not
yeah.
even to primary school.
And now, mum or dad puts them in the car, drives them to school. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's a very different world, isn't it?
I don't even know how, maybe that's why I wagged school so much. I just had that too much freedom.
Yeah. I remember grade 10, like that was the highlight. Every Thursday we had a double session of math and a double session of English. And it was like, yeah, I don't think Thursdays are fun days. And so
Yeah.
my mate and I, we had 9 Thursdays in a row, we wagged it. And we
Uh,
went explore, we get on our bikes and we would just go exploring. We found all sorts of new things in the community that we didn't know existed.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, we had a great time. Yeah, we
Yeah.
were educating ourselves and
Yeah. That's right. Educating yourself.
yeah, yeah, good fun. Yeah. But I'm going to change tack and ask you one last question, which is
Yeah.
quite different to anything I've asked it so far. But I'm curious because I have a lot of this in my life. And so I'm curious for other men. I don't ask it to all men, but I ask it to probably half of them.
Mm.
What is your greatest fear?
Oh, yes. You know what pops into my head is I saw a podcast of yours and your greatest fear getting uh, basically having regret that you didn't follow your path that you should have. Um, that you'll say it a lot better than me, but I think I don't know. Um, I yeah, that's a really good question. My greatest fear is probably getting eaten by a shark because I'm a terrible swimmer. And if I fall over in the bay, in Moreton Bay there, it is full of sharks. It's so hard to get a fish. You know what's so frustrating is when I finally do hook a fish up and then it's a good one and then a shark eats it. It really destroys me. But anyway, that is a fear of mine, and a fear because I'm not a very good swimmer, maybe a fear of the water, which was something I had to get over to get out in the boat. But in life in general, I do agree that I did, and right from the beginning, I have that fear that life is getting away from me, and that I wasn't able to get through everything that I wanted. And even now, I feel like I'm always older than I am, and I compare myself to other people, might be, politicians, presidents, executives that are in their 70s and 80s and still running countries and are still running companies. And I'm thinking, well, I'm in my 50s. I'm still I've still got time to do reach my goals, set my family up, be comfortable in retirement. If I retire, I'm just having fun working at the moment, doing what I do. So yeah, I don't know. That's a real scattergun answer for you, but I guess that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So my comment from there is you'll noticed in the form that I sent you before few questions to answer
yeah,
before today.
yeah,
One of the optional questions in there was for you to pass your birth date on to me because I study a very ancient form of Chinese medicine. And so I've
yeah.
got some good news for you from that.
Oh,
Around your birth date,
yeah.
but it it puts our life into different each decade we go through has a different purpose, a different meaning for us, etc. The the decade of our 60s in Chinese medicine is the best decade of our life.
Is it?
Yes, and I'm now 61 and a half, and I can tell you
Yeah.
life is getting better.
Really?
Yes, it is.
Well, that's
And
good to
so you've
know.
got something to look forward to. It's
Yeah.
not downhill. They say once you hit 40, it's all downhill.
Yeah.
Um, it's not. 60 is wonderful. I absolutely love it. Physically, I'm changing,
Yeah.
but I probably last Christmas, I just started going to the gym.
Mm.
One of my fears is swimming. And so I started, there's a new aquatic center opened near us last December. So I
Yeah.
started swimming. They happen to have a gym, and I'm paying so much a month to go for the swimming, unlimited swimming, and
Mm.
it's no extra to go to the gym. So I'm like, and one of my other sons here, he's a gym junkie, so he's set up an app for me,
Oh,
and
good.
so to do the workouts, what to do, and
Yeah.
da 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 da, and he came along with me a couple of times and got me on the right track.
Yeah.
So I now, 3, 4 days a week, and I've never done this in my life, right? I'm
How,
now
are you
at the
finding you feeling a bit stronger?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm at the gym 3 or 4 days a week I'm in there for like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm not doing all sorts of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
I am lifting as heavy a weight as I can and I'm not doing massive repetitions
Yeah.
because for fitness, I then go out and I'm in the pool for 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's where my fitness. So in the gym, I'm just trying to physically strengthen, like I'm doing heavy compared to some people, I'm not doing heavy lifting, but
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
me, it's heavy and it's not long. I'm not doing 25 repetitions of
Yeah.
anything. I'm doing small amounts, and I'm
Yeah.
feeling great. And I'm just like, I've got a whole new lease on life, and it's not just from the gym.
Yeah.
It's just life's got better at 60. Yeah, so you got something to look forward to. I know you got a couple of
Uh,
years to go yet,
That is
but
interesting. Yeah, I'm 56, so I've
yeah.
got four. It feels like ground rush, when you're parachuting. That last 25 meters feels like it's coming really fast.
So did you parachute in the army?
I did, yeah. That's how I busted my arm and and shoulder and pec and everything. It's a heck of a story, but yeah, it wasn't the best way to get to the ground, but
Yeah,
I survived it. That's the main thing. But
yeah,
that was part of the military service and unit that I was in that I had to parachute.
yeah. So
Yeah.
you'd done quite a few without being injured before that, I assume.
Quite a few, about six jumps, and
Right.
I think it was my seventh or eighth that yeah, I got caught up at the door. There's a fella in front of me balked, and I got pushed from behind, and I fell over the top of him, and my static line wrapped around my wrist, and then smashed me against, I think, the door of the plane as I got sucked out, and it just smashed my arm to pieces and ripped my shoulder out and my right pec off the top of my shoulder. That jerking mission or that jerking action, and but I was luckily the arm turning to sort of jelly. It came loose, and I just got sucked out. My sheet opened, thankfully, because I couldn't really do much, and I came down very uncontrolled with one arm and losing quite a bit of claret, and then I hit the airstrip and busted my ankles and coccyx and that. and then the ambulance broke down coming to get me, did a clutch cable on the airstrip. Can you believe it? It was nearly there. It was nearly there, and then it stopped. I saw it shimmering in the heat. And then I blacked out, and I was told later that they had to call a second ambulance. And yeah, we were in Narandra, and so they took me to Narandra. I was too bad for them, so they ended up taking me to Wagga Wagga, and they stabilised me there, and fixed the bones. And then I lost my right forearm, and they had to replace that forearm with my left latissimus. So speaking of weight training, that's your push-pull muscle, the big one on between, like your lats are your wings, and so I'm missing that full lat, and they transplanted that into my right arm, and did some magical surgery. I believe I was the first latissimus to arm transplant in the world at the time. Dr. James Masson in Sydney did that surgery on me. And the reason they wanted to do that was because they wanted to keep my army career going, and they didn't want to take a muscle from my leg because that would then surely stop my career. Yeah, so they ended up, and it worked. And so I'm still quite capable. It's just that I get quite a bit of pain, and my body's out of alignment a bit, and my neck and everything, quite a bit of chronic pain. But you manage that out in the veggie garden, and a couple of Panadols sometimes. I'm not on any heavy stuff anymore, so but it's all good. But yeah, I don't recommend anyone jump out of a perfectly good aircraft. That's just silly.
I did it once. My boys, for my 49th birthday, bought me like a tandem
Yeah.
skydive. Well, what do
Oh,
you do?
gee.
Like, and they go like, no, we're going on Monday. I'm like, okay, so
Oh, not much time to think about it.
no. But as we're going, as the plane's spiraling up, and we did it down at Ballina, and
Mm.
so the plane's just going in circles, spiraling up. So half the time we're out over the ocean, and the other half
Oh,
we're over the land because we're on the coast.
yeah.
And for some silly reason, I started to get a bit apprehensive every time we went out over the water because I
Oh,
do have fears with water. And it's just like, how ridiculous is that? It doesn't matter whether you hit the water or you
I
hit the
totally
land.
understand though. I
Yeah,
totally understand because I've got that same water fear. So
yeah,
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
yeah. And anyway, and on the way up, I'm thinking tens of thousands of people every day are jumping. Like right as I speak, there are people jumping
Yes.
out of airplanes and nothing happens except they have a
Mm.
good time.
Yeah.
So we go out, the guy, he gets me, like I'm hooked onto the instructor. He gets my legs out, on the edge of the thing. I'm the first one to go out.
Oh,
And Scott, who you met as well,
yes.
he was sitting in there ready to come out with me as well. And soon, the moment I got my leg in the correct spot, the guy just pushed me, and we did half a dozen somersaults.
Really?
Yeah, and I'm like, I said to him later, and he goes, he never told me that was going to happen, and I did
No.
not enjoy going from sitting in that plane to doing
No.
half a dozen somersaults
No,
with
you wouldn't have.
not having any idea it was going to happen.
Yeah,
And
because
we
you
had
might
a
have been thinking that was not part of the plan. Something
yeah,
bad's happened.
and we had a freeloader backpacker in the plane as well, and he was just going to jump out himself, like,
Yeah.
and he was helping subsidize the whole thing. And so we going down, and the I just keep looking down. We're above the clouds, and there's all these rainbows on top of the clouds. And because the kids paid extra, and we jumped from 15,000 feet, not like
Yeah.
10 or whatever it was. So
Yeah.
we're up there pretty high. So we're going down, and the instructor keeps tapping me on the shoulder saying, lift your head up. Well, we had these cheap little goggles on that felt like they were going to fly off. And
Yeah.
so I just was getting my head focused down, and I'm mesmerized by the rainbows.
Yeah.
And every time he taps me on the shoulder, I'll put my head up for like, 5 seconds. And then I'm thinking, I don't like this. And I put it back down. And then the next time he taps me on the shoulder, I look up and I jump because the backpacker, he's come zooming down and he's caught up with us. And he's now like 3 feet away from me, giving me a high five when I put my head up. Scared the heck out of me. I'm like,
Bloody hell.
what the hell? Where did he come from? And, and then all of a sudden the parachute opens and it goes from like massive noise, like
Yeah.
terror, into
Yeah.
this absolute sheer state of silence and
Yeah.
bliss. And I'm
Yeah.
like, stop the parachute. I don't want to go any further. I just want to stay here till it
Mm.
gets dark. I was in serenity, absolutely loved it. So I would love the static line. I would be
Yeah.
happy to run out of the back of the plane so that the moment I jump out of the plane, the chute opens and I just go down slowly and gently. I
Yeah.
could stay there all day. I
That,
actually, years ago, I tried to do training as a paragliding, where you jump off the side of the cliff with the chute already
oh
open.
yeah. Yep. Yep.
I got 3 days into that and stuffed up, and I decided not to continue with it. But I actually love just sitting there in the
Mhm.
serenity of floating around. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I must admit that was my favorite part as well, was that serenity and that quietness. It's nothing like you ever experienced ever anywhere on
mm,
Earth. To
yeah,
have that floating down quietness and nothing around you,
yeah.
um, and just the wind and gently floating down. It's amazing. How'd you go as you got closer to the ground?
Oh, no, it was fine. Like,
You
they
didn't
had
get that
to,
ground rush?
no,
You
no,
didn't
not
feel
really.
that experience? You don't
No, not
remember
really.
it?
All I
Oh,
remember really was that then before we went up, saying you must put your legs up horizontal or you'll break them. Like,
yeah.
yeah. And so I was just so concentrated on getting my legs
Yep.
up and keeping them up so that only the
Yeah.
instructor's legs hit the ground. Um,
Okay. Yes,
yeah. But yeah, it does come up pretty quick on you at that last bit. It's
it
all of a
does.
sudden, yeah, whoosh, and yeah,
I thought that's really amazing. You get to about treetop, about 25 meters, and everything's really slow and you're just floating down.
mm,
And then all of a sudden, the ground just rushes towards you.
yes, oh yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
that's just a funny sensation. And
yeah,
so you have to be ready
yeah,
to land. Then when you're coming down in an army parachute, it's designed to come down quickly, and so you have to be ready for that ground rush experience. And the first time, it really got me. I didn't realize it was like they tell you, but I didn't realize it was that bad.
yeah.
But yeah, yeah, it's quite an experience. Again, probably shouldn't have done it. My intuition was that I shouldn't, and I was right, but I did. So,
It happened.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Excellent. All right. So I'm going to have your contact details and I in the show notes. And I
Yep.
strongly recommend for the men that are listening to go and have a look at Mark's YouTube channel. You'll be highly entertained with his passion and you'll definitely learn something about gardening and life and things like that in general. Is there anything we haven't talked about that you would just quickly like to cover, or have you got any final words of advice for the men listening?
Oh no, stay listening to this podcast. I really enjoyed myself today. No, I appreciate you having me on, Doug. It's a pleasure talking with you and hearing your stories as well. And I think this serves a great purpose, and for men to also listen and take in maybe a bit of different type of content than they used to. And yeah, I'd stick with it. Mm.
Excellent. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you for your time. And for me, it's been like having Steve Irwin on. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Except a bit more melee. Yeah,
Yeah. But yeah,
yeah,
and I'm glad you've been mellow today because I would be like out of, yeah, you
yeah,
animate on your YouTube channel. That's, yeah,
yeah, yeah. It's a, purpose for the place. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
Totally enjoyed it, mate.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
Well, we're at the end of another thought provoking episode. Remember to subscribe so you'll be alerted to new episodes. I want to say thank you to the men who are joining me on this journey of intuitive development. I truly hope our time together has expanded your reality and reinforced trust in your ever reliable gut feeling. Embrace your intuition, it will not lead you astray. Until next time, stay tuned, stay curious, and trust your gut.